Hey guys, Marco here from Aviator Life CS. Welcome back to the channel. And today we'll continue with our flight instruments and displays system review, and we're going to start talking about non-normal checklists and abnormals. So this is what we have on the checklist for the flight instruments and displays. And as you can see, the Airspeed Unreliable is the only one with memory items. And in today's video, we are going to talk about what the FCTM says regarding the Airspeed Unreliable. Unreliable airspeed indications can result due to erroneous data from the pitot-static system, AOA vanes, adherus, or damage to the radome. If an unreliable airspeed condition occurs, the flight crew should be familiar with the approximate pitch, attitude, and thrust settings for each phase of flight. If abnormal airspeed indications are recognized, immediately set the target pitch, attitude, and thrust setting for the airplane configuration from the Airspeed Unreliable memory items. Once flight path is under control and the airplane is not in a critical phase of flight, accomplish the Airspeed Unreliable non-normal checklist. The crew should alert ATC if unable to maintain assigned altitude or if altitude indications are unreliable. The memory items for target pitch and thrust must be accomplished as soon as it is suspected that airspeed indications are incorrect. When those memory items on the Airspeed Unreliable non-normal checklist were developed, this is what they took into account, and I think this is very good to know. The memorized settings are calculated to work for all model engine combinations at all weights and at all altitudes. The flaps up settings will be sufficient such that the actual airspeed remains above stall and below overspeed. The flaps extended settings will be sufficient such that the actual airspeed remains above stall and below the flap placard limit. The settings are biased toward higher airspeed, as it is better to be at a high energy state than a low energy state. These memorized settings are to allow time to stabilize the airplane, remain within the flight envelope without overspeed or stall, and then continue with reference to the checklist. Settings are provided for flight with and without flaps extended. The crew should use the setting for the condition they are in to keep the airplane safe while accessing the checklist. So the main goal of these pitch and thrust settings is to maintain the airplane safely within the flight envelope, not to maintain a specific climb or level flight. And these ones are the settings we need to memorize with flaps extended or flaps up. So if we have flaps extended, we need to set 10 degrees pitch attitude and 80% N1. If the flaps are up, it's 4 degrees pitch attitude, 75% thrust. Once the airplane is stable, we need to find out which source is reliable and which one is not. So there are several flight deck indications that can be present during an unreliable airspeed condition that can assist the flight crew to determine a reliable airspeed indication. If a reliable airspeed can be determined without referring to the flight with unreliable airspeed tables in the QRH, the reliable airspeed source can be used for the remainder of the flight. It is important to emphasize that all of the flight deck indications need to be considered in order to accurately determine a reliable source of indicated airspeed. If a reliable source of indicated airspeed cannot be determined, refer to flight with unreliable airspeed tables in the QRH. Possible erroneous flight deck indications that can assist the flight crew to determine a reliable airspeed indications are a stick shaker activation on one side, airspeed low indications on one side, pitch limit indicator PLI on one side. Just keep in mind that comparing only two corresponding airspeeds is not a conclusive indication to determine a reliable airspeed indication. The two corresponding airspeeds can still both be unreliable. If the flight crew suspects that the unreliable airspeed condition may be caused by erroneous AOA or angle of attack, in addition to the flight deck indications we read before, the AOA disagree alert is shown on both PFDs, and erroneous minimum and maximum speed bars are shown on one side. In this situation, comparing indicated airspeed on the PFDs with the ISFD or integrated standby flight display can help the flight crew determine a reliable airspeed indication. Ground speed information is available from the FMC and on the instrument displays. These indications can be used as a cross-check. Many air traffic control radars can also measure ground speeds. If, by comparing flight deck indications, the flight crew is not able to determine a reliable airspeed indication, the Airspeed Unreliable checklist says, when in trim and stabilized, compare the captain, first officer, and standby airspeed indicators. The intent of this statement is for the pilot flying to set the pitch, attitude, and thrust setting from the performance in flight QRH flight with unreliable airspeed tables and allow the airplane to stabilize before comparing the airspeed indications to those shown in the table. The airplane is considered stabilized when the thrust and pitch have been set and the pitch is trimmed with no further trim movement needed to maintain the pitch setting. This is not an instantaneous process and must be complete before comparing indicated and expected airspeeds for accurate results. So in different phases of flight, if we get the airspeed unreliable, let's see what the FCTM says. During takeoff, if an unreliable airspeed event occurs during takeoff at or after V1, maintain takeoff thrust, smoothly rotate towards 15 degrees pitch attitude and establish the normal takeoff pitch attitude target. Retract the landing gear and maintain flap configuration. Climb at the normal takeoff pitch attitude target until reaching a safe attitude, acceleration height, and do the airspeed unreliable non-normal checklist. During the descent, idle thrust descents to 10,000 feet can be made by flying pitch attitude and checking rate of descent in the QRH performance in flight tables. At 2,000 feet above the selected level of altitude, reduce the rate of descent to 1,000 feet per minute. On reaching the selected altitude, establish pitch and thrust from the airplane's configuration. If possible, allow the airplane to stabilize before changing configuration and altitude. During the approach, if available, we can accomplish an ILS or GLS approach, establish landing configuration early on final approach, at glide slope intercept or beginning of descent, set thrust and altitude per the QRH tables, and control the rate of descent with thrust. Landing, control the final approach so as to touch down approximately 1,000 feet to 1,500 feet beyond the threshold. Fly the airplane onto the runway. Do not hold it off or let it float to touchdown. Now for the go-around or miss approach, in the event that either the captain's or first officer's airspeed indication is reliable, the flight directors on the reliable PFD can be used during an approach. When toga is pushed, in the event of a go-around or miss approach, pitch guidance may automatically be removed from view on both PFDs as a result of a disagreement between PFD flight director pitch guidance. Flight director roll guidance remains available. Flight director pitch guidance returns to view on the reliable PFD when a pitch mode change is made or automatically occurs. Simultaneously, flight director roll guidance is automatically removed on the unreliable PFD. If an airspeed unreliable event occurs during approach and a go-around or miss approach is necessary, execute a go-around using go-around thrust. Smoothly increase pitch towards 15 degrees pitch altitude and establish a normal takeoff pitch altitude target. Upon reaching a safe altitude, set the target pitch altitude and thrust settings from the Airspeed Unreliable non-normal checklist and accomplish the checklist. A couple of notes here, they say if the approach mode is used during the approach, it is important to exit the approach mode in the event of a go-around. And we can do that by pressing toggle. The other note says if only the standby airspeed indication is reliable, do not use toggle. Hey guys, that's the end of the video for today. I hope you liked it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, please do it now, and don't forget to hit that bell so you will be notified once we upload a new video. If you think these videos could be useful for somebody else, please share them. That's going to help me a lot to grow the channel. Next week, we will continue with Airspeed Unreliable. We will go through the non-normal checklist. Until then, guys, please take care and hope to see you soon.